Welcome, Kevin Otteson. Thank you so much for being here with us today with your presentation about collaborative online international learning in the language learning classroom. Can we get a round of applause for Kevin? Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you, Jason. And thank you for joining my presentation. I'll be talking about COIL, or Collaborative Online International Learning in the Language Learning Classroom, or what's often called a LLC. I'm working at Nagoya Women's University. It's a small private women's university here in Nagoya. And I'll be talking about my experience using COIL with them and also at another university as well. In this presentation, I'll kind of give a general overview of what COIL is for those of you who are not so familiar with it. And then I'll talk about language learning COIL, or LLCs, and how it differs from traditional COIL, or like a regular COIL. And I'll give you some examples of how I've used COIL in my classroom. And then I'll try to give you some information about how, if you're interested, how you might get involved or learn more about it. And if there's any time at the end, I can take any questions or hear some of your comments. I just want to start off by showing a video. This is a little bit over 2 minutes in length, but I think it gives a nice little overview of what COIL is. And it's produced by Florida International University. And I'll give some information if you're interested in doing maybe a COIL project with Florida International. So I'll just play the video here.
Imagine trying to teach a person to swim without water. Well, the same holds true for global learning. If we want our students to gain the knowledge and skills of global citizenship, they need opportunities to work on shared challenges with people who are different from them, in our classrooms, our communities, around the world, and online. COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, is a powerful form of global learning for both teachers and their students. With COIL, teachers in different institutions, countries, and cultures partner to design experiences that will challenge their students to connect their diverse knowledge and perspectives across borders of time, place, language, and discipline. COIL is an accessible form of global learning because it's often embedded within existing face-to-face, hybrid, or fully online courses. COIL collaborations can involve courses in the same discipline, such as students comparing different marine conservation practices across the world, or in complementary disciplines, such as architecture and anthropology students teaming up to create more culturally responsive building designs. COIL experiences usually last from 4 to 8 weeks, and they involve 3 main components. Icebreaker activities that help students get to know and trust each other. A collaborative task that demands diverse contributions from every person participating. And reflection activities that help students transform their COIL experiences into new ways of thinking about themselves, others, and the world around them. Sure, COIL uses technology to connect people and their ideas, and it often involves voice and video conferencing. But you don't have to be super tech-savvy to communicate and collaborate. Great COIL experiences can involve low-bandwidth, asynchronous exchanges using nothing but a smartphone. COIL faculty and students thrive when they're supported by a team of international education leaders, instructional technologists, and educational developers. And COIL is a critical component of robust, resilient international partnerships. COIL is powerful on its own, but when it connects faculty and students to other opportunities to engage with the world's knowledge network, such as language learning and intercultural dialogues, and teaching, research, study, service, and internships abroad, COIL maximizes its potential to enable global learning for all.
Okay, so that's just a little short overview of what COIL is, and I'll touch on some of the points that were hit on in the video, as well as then I'll talk about my experience with COIL and how you can get involved. COIL is a type of virtual exchange. There are many different types of virtual exchanges out there, but COIL is just one of them. And as the video says, it's closely tied to a pre-existing course in a university. As a student, you can participate in a virtual language exchange with classmates from a different university outside of your country. It tends to be in a higher education context, such as a university, and it can be completely online or in a blended format. So, the Stevens Initiative came out with a virtual exchange typology. They talked about different virtual exchanges that exist. COIL is one of them, but there's also collaborative curriculum among institutions. Single institution provides the curriculum for virtual exchange. There's outsourced virtual exchange programs, and there's also hybrid virtual exchange programs, or what universities like Kansai University term COIL Plus. COIL exchanges can take many forms. Often they involve some sort of a research project. They could be producing a media project, such as a short video or a promotional film, a website or a blog. They might be business plans or even action plans, but these are just some of the many types that COIL exchanges can use for their projects that they involve. Just a little bit more information about COIL. It connects accredited courses at 2 or more higher education institutions, and usually they're in a different country or setting. The COIL model does not merely promote students from different countries sharing in an online classroom. Rather, COIL creates equitable team-taught learning environments where faculty of different cultures work together to develop a shared syllabus, and this emphasizes experiential and collaborative, spelling problem there, student learning. And I really enjoy just working with my partner in China. It's really fun just collaborating with her, and I learn a lot. Not only do our students learn quite a bit from these programs, but I'd say, there's a lot of learning that goes on between us as well. We learn about each other's cultures, and we just become better teachers, I feel, through taking on a project like this. COIL models have 3 steps, and the video talks about the icebreaker. This is where students build rapport, they engage personally with their group members in different countries, and it also facilitates team building. This is really important. People might overlook the icebreaker, but as you can imagine, if you're a student and you're asked to collaborate with some students in a different country, in a different language, you might have some sort of apprehension. I can imagine that'd be normal. So putting some icebreaking activities at the beginning of your COIL program is really important to get the project off on the right foot. And I'll talk a little bit more about that just in terms of my experience with 2 different institutions using COIL project. There's comparison analysis where the students learn the communication tools and the styles of communication, and they discover ways to work with and interact with each other. So there's usually an LMS type of website or a program or an app that you're using. So students are also getting used to using that as well. It might be different from the LMS that you're using at your university because, for example, what works in Japan might not work in China. So there's a little bit of a learning curve there. And then we see the collaboration where there's some sort of project and the students work on it together. And then they work on that project. And then finally, as the video mentions, there's a reflection activity, which is very important as well. COIL projects, as the video mentions, they can be face-to-face, fully online, or hybrid. They can be embedded in complementary content, or COIL projects can be embedded in courses covering the same or similar content. And as the video mentions, they typically last between 4 to 8 weeks. I've done, 7 to 8 week projects in the past. They can be intradisciplinary, where you have students working within a single discipline. They can be cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary. I'll give you some examples of what these might look like. Intradisciplinary might be, for example, a student A in an English literature course at University X works with student B in an English literature course at University Y, researching Shakespeare's use of conflict in his literature. It might be multidisciplinary, where student A in a mass media communication class works with student B or student B in a computer science class producing a short digital promotional video clip. Could be cross-disciplinary, where students studying post-World War II era films in Japan in course A analyze them from a gender studies perspective in course B. And they also might be intradisciplinary, where student A in a marketing class works with student B in English education, researching on how educational product companies promote their products to educational organizations around the world and suggest a better approach. Another term that comes up, or a popular term that comes up with COIL, or Collaborative Online International Learning, is internationalization at home. And Beelan and Jones talk about internationalization at home as the purposeful integration of international and intercultural dimensions in the formal curriculum for all students within domestic learning environments. And Teakins in 2013 talks about how internationalization at home is not only concerned with what we do. Well, typically, in the past, it's been the students who had international or intercultural contact have been the fortunate few who have the means or the time to study abroad. But with internationalization at home, we're trying to give all of our students opportunities to interact in intercultural situations. So COIL is a really useful tool to give all of our students in our classroom, not just the students who study abroad or who have the means or motivation to do so, but every student in your class has opportunities for intercultural interactions. 3 steps of internationalization at home. There's the add-on, where it can be, you might have an international module that's just added to the curriculum. There's really no connection to the curriculum as a whole. And this is kind of probably what I do in my current setting as a teacher using COIL. Then it might take as you go along, it might be more infused, where many instructors are adding activities, but the goal is not really clear. And then finally, you have transformation, where you build this internationalization into the whole curriculum at your institution. I'll talk a little bit about, so I've talked about COIL, general COIL, but I'd also like to talk about LLCs, language learning COIL design, and I'll try to highlight how it's a little bit different from general COIL. So with language learning COIL designs, the students have a good amount of communication practice using the target language to be acquired. And in terms of the COIL task design, there's a task that enhances students' fluency in their L2 communication, involving both sides of students together. And the language that's used, the instruction language might be English, but the practice language might be various types of language. So if you're working with students, let's say in the United States, maybe Japanese majors, and they might be maybe basic or intermediate users, maybe their class is primarily taught in English, but they practice using Japanese in their classroom as it's a Japanese course. So, the lingua franca in general COIL is mostly English is chosen. But with language learning coil design, it could be various. The collaboration mode, with general coil, it can be synchronous or asynchronous, but with LLCs, it's really like the synchronous is really important. You could do asynchronous, but the students really benefit from the synchronous, like Zoom chat meetings or video chat meetings with each other, where they're talking to each other in real time. I know it can be difficult setting up times for students to collaborate together in real time, especially across time zones, but this is really important for the students to have that opportunity for real-time contact. I was introduced to COIL at Nanzan University. They have a Nanzan University COIL program. And over there, they have 3 different types of COIL. There's basic COIL, academic COIL, and PBL COIL, project-based learning COIL. I did basic COIL as I was teaching mostly first-year students. And the goal for me is to get them interested in or more as maybe just dip their toe in the water or break the ice of intercultural contact, and maybe get them excited about possibly, or get them thinking about possibly studying abroad, either short-term or long-term in the near future. And I'll give you some examples of what I used for my LLC, my language learning COIL. And the first one I did, which was in 2020, was with Tianjin Normal University and Nanzan University students. This is just a little overview of both universities. One thing you need to think about if you're doing a COIL project is the system, the academic calendar. Are they on a quarter system or a semester system or a trimester system? With China, they start in March with their classes and also in August. So they're kind of, they start about a month earlier than what most Japanese institutions do. The majors, I had 2 different classes. I had a humanities majors and ABE majors over there, and over at Tianjin Normal University, most of the students there were education majors. The class was communication skills and oral communication. So there's 40 students in total. And we partnered up with an English communication skills at Tianjin Normal of 44 students. So we made groups of about 4 students, 2 Japanese, 2 Chinese, and they conduct a research project based on one of the weekly discussion topics. So they chose a topic, and I'll show you what they did. And they conducted a research project where they gave a survey out to 50 Japanese students and 50 Chinese students, collected the data, analyzed it, and presented it to their class in a joint Zoom meeting in week 8. So here's just the overview of what we did, how I set it up, or how we set it up. There's a prep phase where we're just, we call this week 0, where the students are just installing the software, getting into groups, getting familiar. We used WeChat. It's similar to Line, but they couldn't use Line in China, so we used WeChat. And then we had an ice-breaking activity where the students recorded a 90-second self-introduction. And then we get into the meat of the project, where they discuss each week a different topic. Some of these topics we were studying in our class already. So as you see, September, we talked about summer vacation. The students compared and contrasted their summer vacation. So through WeChat, they're talking and discussing summer vacation. Then they do a reflection on what they learned or what was interesting, talk about food the next week, holidays and traditions, and interpersonal relationships and careers. And then finally, we give the students an opportunity to conduct a survey on one of the 4 topics they discussed, create a PowerPoint, and present their joint PowerPoint presentations together through a Zoom meeting. So the students in China were all in the same classroom, and the students in Japan were joined through Zoom. So there'd be 2 students in the classroom in China at the front of the classroom talking, and then there'd be their two partners on the video screen or the projection screen presenting as well. I'm running out of time, so I'll just kind of, this is what I also did at Nagoya Women's University, a little bit different majors, but the students also gave a joint presentation on cities in China and Japan. And they compared and contrasted those and gave a final video presentation at the end where they chose different aspects of both cities in China and Japan and compared and contrasted different topics related to those cities, their history, their culture, their lifestyles. Yeah, so this is kind of the overview of that as well. Very similar, icebreaker, research, discussion, and then finally a report. Just some reflections from the students, some themes that came up from the Nanzan students. They talked about feeling closer. They also talked about how they developed knowledge of their own culture as well as Chinese culture. They talked about improving their communication and listening ability. And their attitudes towards English also was something that brought up as well. They saw English as a very useful tool to communicate across cultures. And they also learned technical and cooperation skills. With the students that I'm working with at Nagoya Women's University, one of the main things that came up was a reduction of anxiety towards communicating with students from different cultures or different backgrounds. For many of my students at Nagoya Women's University, they have had very limited intercultural contact. And they're not English majors, they're childhood education majors. And so they were very nervous, anxious about using English to collaborate with students in China. Some of the students talked about how they were scared. They had heard that maybe people in China might have a negative attitude towards Japan, so they were concerned about that as well. But through this activity, they reduced, many of the students talked about reducing their anxiety towards intercultural communication. Feeling closer was also mentioned as well, intercultural knowledge, and assertiveness and technical skills were also themes that came up in the reflection. Challenges, of course, it's not easy. There's a language gap. If you have advanced English users and maybe lower level English users, the students in China with my students from Nagoya Women's University, they expressed frustration at the beginning there in terms of the lack of English or the difficulty that they had, but they were Japanese majors. So it was interesting just watching the video chats that they had. I would say a lot of them, maybe half of the communication was in Japanese. So the Chinese students mentioned how it was very helpful for them for their Japanese level to improve through this, actually, even though it was an English course. Scheduling meeting times can be a challenge, but if you're working with students in China, there's only a 1 hour time difference. So it's quite easy to do. And it's nice to have that instant contact with students. Send a message, they get a response right back in real time. Whereas if they're collaborating with somebody in North America or South America, they might have to wait 8 hours to get a response back. And there's also lack of participation as well. Some students didn't participate as much as maybe their classmates. So there can be difficulties with that. These are just some suggestions for maybe tasks that you might want to use in a language learning coil, like peer feedback loops for writing, exchanging video diaries, free and focused discussion sessions, and maybe extensive reading circles. If you're interested in using COIL or doing a LLC, a language learning coil, here are some resources here. Kansai University has the Institute for Innovative Global Education. You can sign up and create a profile, and you can find a partner and collaborate through ImmerseU, their LMS, and they give you training, free training. It's really useful. Nagoya University of Foreign Studies is a partner, with IIGE. And I'm sorry, she'll probably be mad at me for saying this, but Ujitani Eiko Sensei is the point of contact. So if you're interested, maybe talk to her, or I might be over at NUFS for a little bit from April, so you can contact me about that as well. Nanzan University has a COIL program as well. SUNY, they're kind of the leaders in that. Florida International University COIL has just their own partnering index. So if you're interested in working directly with them, you can sign up through there. And yeah, so this is the Japan COIL Association member list. As you can see, Nagoya University of Foreign Studies and Nagoya University of Arts is partners. So if you're at NUFS, you can use this, the IIGE from Kansai University. And also, just a little promotion here, Nanzan University will be having a COIL symposium later on in February. So please, if you're interested, sign up. It looks like they'll have simultaneous Doji Suyaku there, so simultaneous interpretation. So maybe if you're interested, you know, that'd be fun or interesting to hear what's going on over at Nanzan University. But if you're interested at all, please send me an email and I can give you information as well and maybe some suggestions. So I think my time is up. I'm sorry, I went over. But yeah, please contact me if you have any questions about COIL.
All right, Kevin, thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you for providing those resources at the end. That's really, really helpful. And can we get everybody to unmute for a moment and give Kevin a round of applause? Thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.